go. Here we are. So welcome to Better Conversations Live. We're here to give you the words and the confidence, right, Glenn, to have better conversations on a whole range of topics. And so this is our first one, right?
Whoop, whoop. First live.
Yeah. So you and I are going to be hosting today, but we're going to be introducing you to the other co-hosts. We've got an interview with Chung, and I've got a few other things which we'll share with you as we go along. If you are listening to this live, welcome, fantastic. Thank you for joining us. And tell us in the chat where you're joining from. Be nice to see that. And if you are watching it as a replay, you'll find it on YouTube and on BetterConversations.LIVE. And feel free to drop in comments and tell us how we're doing. How are we getting on today? So yeah, so the replay will be on YouTube and Better Conversations Live for all of these, as well as a podcast. So the podcast is now going to be the replays of our episodes. So Glenn, who are our co-hosts on Better Conversations Live?
Yeah, we got a super selection of co-hosts, to be fair, and this is awesome, right? First live, super excited to get everybody introduced to the potential audience. So we have 3 other co-hosts, which will allow them to introduce themselves, actually, and I think we should start with Ben Miller. I think it'd be cool to bring Ben on and allow him to kind of introduce himself to the audience.
Oh, that's me. That's me.
That's a prompt for you. Yeah, let's bring him in. Hey, Ben. So Sehaam's just obviously kind of started and kicked off the show. We're going through all the co-hosts so that we can kind of introduce ourselves, and we thought we'd put you on the spot first. So over to you to introduce yourself. Go for it, man.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, I'm Ben. A brief introduction. I have many interests. I also do many things which will probably make a bit more sense shortly. I recently co-founded Latitude, which is a social design agency. I'm a director at Healthwatch, an associate at Oak Ridge Consulting. But one thing weaves through most things which I do is the brain. So I personally live with ADHD, which, it has a double negative deficit and disorder. But, is this the real full picture, or are we missing something? So, for me, attention, I kind of recognize it's a really precious resource that it's how we engage with the world. It shapes what we find. It directs our energy. But there's really there's lots of different flavors, and a deficit in one might mean a surplus in another. And then there's the hyperactivity element. Having energy appears to be a problem in the workplace and in society, but is that because we have to sit down all day indoors when actually our bodies and brain evolved to do the opposite? So that's the context to me, and the course itself is something which is going to be launching probably in the early summer. It's about making this invisible world more visible, or more explicitly, it's about neurodiversity in the workplace, which is really about how we're all wired differently, and ultimately this shapes how we perceive, how we think, how we learn, how we communicate, how we make choices, and just everything really. So the hope for me from this course is that it's a way of shifting away from simply trying to fix people, to understanding the social context, and to cultivate the conditions which allow for different strengths to emerge, if you like. And so the course itself is really about blending theory and practice, personal experiences, a little bit about human history, some of the latest brain science. And it's really just trying to package it all together to help leaders build awareness, have better conversations, which is what this show's about, and ultimately design inclusive environments. But there's a real broader narrative here as well. We all face quite big, grand challenges. So thinking and doing the same things aren't sustainable. So what comes next? And we're part of a mass-produced society where everything is standardized, everything is efficient, everything is controlled. Scale's the only important thing, but actually I think people are tired of being measured, tired of being categorized, sorted, discarded, and actually what comes next. And I believe that we could do better, and this is where different perspectives come into play. We need more critical 100%. Thinking, creative thinking, that type of thing. But I think that just a couple of things to finish on. We need a new vision of the future, a shared mission which utilizes, unifies different minds, different perspectives. And we also need to empower people to explore different pathways, divergent pathways to get us there. And we also need to be better at supporting people who get lost on the way. So hopefully this gives you a flavour of what's to come. And I'll share more in due course. But just a quick note on a couple of guests, actually, Glenn, just to say I've got a couple of guests coming up. So I'll just quickly mention those. Drew Tarvin, a humour engineer from the US. He's the founder of Humour That Works. So I'll be interviewing him on the 11th of May. And also Charlotte Villeur, an ex-chair of the Institute of Directors and founder of the Institute of Neurodiversity. I'll be interviewing her on the 1st of June. So that's it from me.
Sounds really interesting, man. Really interesting. And we've both seen Drew Tarvin kind of present before. Really interesting guy. So looking forward to that one. And certainly in that space of kind of neurodiversity, a really, really important topic for leaders at the moment. So looking forward to your interviews and your contribution. Thanks, man.
Thank you. Take care.
So bringing on our next co-host, we kind of discussed how introduce, we go full name, but actually Hasbee is the perfect introduction for this evening. So over to you, Hasbee. Just kind of give us an intro in terms of your contributions towards the Better Conversations Live.
Thank you. Well, the reason I can allow myself to only mention my first name is that there aren't that many Hasbees in the world. So I'm pretty sure that if you type Hasbee on LinkedIn, you'll get to my account. So yes, I'm a doctor, an expert and lecturer in diversity and inclusion, a queer activist, and a musician. And ever since I was born, I must say I've been working on making the world a better and less discriminating place. But I started getting paid for it only for about 10 years ago, I think. And in this long journey, I've supported tens of people in becoming more inclusive of the beautiful diversity there is in our societies. And I must say it's the most exciting and rewarding job. It's exciting because it's not just teaching about a new skill, like how to use a software or to learn about a new statistical modeling technique, for example. Really, becoming more inclusive requires that you do some things that no other job asks you about. You have to decondition your brain. You need to have the courage to stand up for minorities. You need to completely change your vocabulary and how you interact with others. So it's not an easy job, but it is clearly possible. And we're lucky now to know the best way to become more inclusive. And what is wonderful about this job is that the changes you implement actually have a direct impact on other people's lives. You can see your colleagues being more outgoing and authentic. You offer them a sense of belonging that some may never have experienced before. You get teams that are happier to work together and that are more motivated. And trust me, at least in my experience, there's nothing more satisfying than seeing people bloom. And I think you can put a price on that. So,
100%.
Yeah, if everything I've just said resonates with you, don't hesitate to connect with me on LinkedIn or social media. You will have the possibility this fall to follow a course I'm crafting for Better Conversations on how to become an inclusive leader. I'll cover the 12 jobs that you need to undertake for diversity and inclusion, and that I've seen do wonders in my experience. It's going to be very practical and hopefully mentally engaging. So yeah, really looking forward to that. And I'd like to leave you with a question that I wish everybody would ask themselves is, think of the last time probably you wish someone had stood up for you. Like, what did it feel like? How lonely were you feeling? And I'm asking this question because this is a situation that minorities are in almost on a daily basis. So think about that. And if you want to share your thoughts, hit me up.
Awesome. Oh man, yeah, so looking forward to that course as well. It's just going to be magical. Thank you, Hasbi. Thank you indeed.
Thank you.
Looking forward to the guests that you're going to bring on, and certainly your kind of insights as we go forward with Better Conversations Live. Superb. So I think we have one other co-host who can't join us today, and Sehaam, did we want to kind of give an intro for Mag? I know she kind of sent us over a bit of an intro, which I thought was super sweet, and I think it'd be nice maybe just to, if we've got a picture of Mag, we can kind of pop up.
Definitely.
There
Sorry,
she is.
It covers
Boom.
you a little bit there.
Oh, well, no, trust me, that's not a bad thing at all. Actually, I'm sure people would prefer to look at Mag's picture than me. But let me just give a quick overview here. So Mag has had a 20-year career in technology as a coder. So she is one of those females in that minority within the kind of sort of dev and coding space, but she is a coder and a leader, and super powerful as well. So Mag is a tutor for the conversation skills module of Leaders Who Coach, super impactful, from Better Conversations, which helps leaders to bring a stronger coaching style to their leadership, which is, I've been on the course myself, really, really powerful. Mag also runs her own personal leadership and executive coaching business, Thinking Alley, and considered it
ally.
Ally even. Why did I go for Ally? Sorry. Thinking Ally, and considers it a privilege to help others unlock their own potential. Mag believes coaching is a way to bring equity and listen deeply to an individual. So that's the intro. Yeah. Sorry, Mag, for the mispronunciation of your business name. There was always going to be a blip, to be fair, Sehaam, and it was guaranteed to be me, right?
Well, that's the first one. Might be. It's not the. No, actually, mine was the first one earlier, wasn't it? We can tally up later. Exactly. And so, Glenn, what about yourself?
Oh yeah. I was thinking about this about 2-3 minutes before we came on, and how to introduce myself. I think, as is my approach. So I've been in recruitment now, so talent acquisition recruitment, whichever way you want to refer to it, for over 15 years, and I'm super passionate about the value that kind of recruitment and talent acquisition can deliver for a business. And I think I think that the advocacy for recruitment is one of the things that I'm really kind of indexing on now, is the fact that it's more than just a service within a business. It's more than an operational function. It's actually vital to how businesses will perform and overperform and highly perform going forward. And I think it's never more illustrated than, kind of the period of time we're in at the moment, where, let's be fair, that kind of competition for individuals, everybody refers to it as kind of talent. There's a lot of kind of catchphrases for the industry itself, but I would prefer, you're competing for individual skills, experience, knowledge, what they can deliver for you within your business, and it is highly competitive. I popped a post on LinkedIn the other day which kind of illustrated that there was something in the region of over 14,000 open product manager jobs, but actually only about 4,000 product managers open for work. So 71% of those particular live roles will go unfilled if you look at that kind of landscape. So that's how competitive it is. And I think you really do need to have a very thoughtful, intentional, empathetic, personalized end-to-end recruitment process to stand a chance of really hiring the best individuals. And this is where it really links into Better Conversations, Leaders Who Coach, in terms of leaders have to take a really active role in shaping that recruitment and talent acquisition function right from the beginning. So whether you're a 3 to 4 person startup, a scale up going from 30 to 70, or an enterprise business of thousands of people, you need to be thinking very intentionally about how you approach recruitment. So for me, I will continue to advocate and promote the value of recruitment. And this is why I was super excited to be on Better Conversations Live, because I think there are a number of kind of guests that we will look to talk to over the coming weeks where recruitment is a challenge, and they can share where they've met that challenge, how they've overcome that challenge, and provide insights to the wider audience on that. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. Do you get to introduce yourself, Sehaam? Surely you must do, no?
Well, yeah, and you'll be proud of me, Glenn. I haven't prepared anything. Because I think I'm really keen for, I've been talking a lot about the importance of better conversations for leaders, having the right skills to be able to enrich our relationships. If we're trying to get people motivated and excited about something or focused on a piece of work, very often we hit the wrong tone, a bit like a parent telling their teenager what to do. And we've got to improve that capability, because business outcomes relies so much on people willing and wanting to come together to do some work. So that's everything that I've been doing these past few years has been around equipping leaders with really powerful skills and practicing them. You know me, it's all about practice, all about trying and experimenting and making mistakes, and so having you guys on Better Conversations Live and making this happen is a brilliant thing, because I think we are going to get to discuss so many things, and we've all talked about the fact that sometimes we just don't know how to get a conversation started. There are a lot of people that want to talk about these important topics, but we feel uncomfortable or awkward or feel like we're going to mess up in what we want to say or offend someone, so we avoid it, and that's a pity, because we want as many people in this conversation as possible around things. So yeah, that's my bit.
Yeah. So this is us.
So yeah, this is us. And so our first guest, I did a recording yesterday with our guest, Nathan Chung, who is recently diagnosed as autistic. So we'll be playing that now in a moment. But just wanted to say to everyone, stick around for the end, because we've got a few announcements. We've also got a phrase of the week, so we want to see how that lands with everyone. And before we wrap up, I'm just going to jump straight in, because we've got quite a bit going on here.
Sounds good.
Hey, and we've spoken before. Hang on there. Hang on.
Straight in.
I'm going to bump you out.
Cool.
Actually, I'll do it this way. There we go. Yeah, it's great. And we've spoken before, but quick intro, and then I'm going to hand over to you to maybe embellish. And that is, you have worked as a cloud security specialist. You've been in the sector for about 20 years. And you're a big advocate for women in tech and cyber. And something that we're going to cover a little bit later is you being Ally of the Year. So I'm curious as to how that came about. And you also host your own podcast, NeuroSec, which I've listened to and I've really, really enjoyed. I've learned a lot from it. Do you want to say a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I've worked in IT and Cybersecurity for more than 20 years. So overall, some quick background about me. I was born in Hawaii, now living in Colorado. I've had autism and ADHD my entire life, and I only got diagnosed this past January in my 40s. As the saying goes, better late than never. I'm an advocate for diversity and inclusion, including gender diversity, racial equity, and neurodiversity. I serve on multiple boards, including WESIS, that's Women's Cybersecurity Colorado, the WESIS Racial Equity Committee, Ignite Worldwide, and Spark Mindset. I'm also a foodie and enjoy playing video games.
That's good to hear. That's very nice to hear. Well, and you're very active. I think that's what's really interesting is, and I do want to touch on the autism because that was a big event for you, right? Getting diagnosed with autism. And given that we're talking about autism, maybe a lovely place to start would be to share your journey, your story, and how you came to be diagnosed.
Sure. Let's see. I've had ADHD and autism all my entire life, but I started having problems with work maybe around 5 or 6 years ago. Just social issue, like talking with people, getting to know people better. And looking back, I've always had it, but it really came to a head about 5 to 6 years ago when having a lot of work problems. And then finally, I decided it's time to do something about it, and that's why I started seeking some professional help. And I read a lot of books that guided me, because when you read stories of others who have autism and ADHD, it really fit me like a pattern. So I made the decision in January of this year to go through the formal testing, and I got my official diagnosis in January. It feels comforting and relieving to have that acknowledgement, but I just wish I had done sooner, but yeah, better late than never.
Right. An explanation really for maybe how you were feeling and the things that you found difficult or were struggling with. Yeah. And you previously, when we've spoken, you've talked about some of the difficulty that sits for a lot of people around being diagnosed later in life. And it comes as somewhat of a relief, but then it has also other complications in terms of explaining yourself or how your community might receive that. I wonder if you could share a little bit more about that.
Yes, it is very difficult because we live in a world where ableism rules, where we're evaluated more upon what we can or cannot do. Like, for example, you could think of it as it's like a stigma, kind of like being different. Being different in our society is seen as such a negative. I like to use the analogy of X-Men in the comics, like being different and having powers and abilities that others can't. That looks great and everything, but what I really liked about watching the X-Men, especially the TV series growing up, it just showed how difficult it is being different. It's great having special abilities, but the negative stigma and just having people just not like me, like people like me, or just treat me differently. It is really hard with that growing up. But with diagnosis and understanding myself better, it has made my life easier in the now.
Yeah, for sure. And there's I wonder if you felt it. Certainly, I think I shared with you my eldest daughter has seems like she has autism, and I think it came as a relief for both of us. Definitely for her in having something that explained the way she saw the world, and for me just to understand that a lot better, understand her a lot better, and I can honestly say that. The sort of dynamic between us is so much calmer, and I just think I wish I'd known this years ago. But there is the way that we, and I'm guilty of it for sure with my daughter, right? How people behave. Could you say a little bit more about when people don't understand the way that you view the world? What kind of behaviors you've experienced from them that have made it difficult?
Okay. Let's see. At the very high level, it's just being treated differently. It's harder because having a neurodiverse condition such as ADHD and autism, it's invisible. It's not a visible disability like being in a wheelchair or being blind. So when it's invisible, when people don't see it, it becomes even harder. It's like when someone is offensive to you or seems offensive to you, people tend to react with hostility without understanding that maybe a person is like this because they have a neurodiverse condition. It basically all comes down to having a lot of empathy and understanding for people, for understanding a person's difference. Something as simple as that. And you brought up a very good point about your daughter, because one of the really important things I learned from my guests, from my podcast, is essentially mourning. Because parents, I'm a parent too, like when a parent has a child with a disability, a lot of parents, they have these hopes and dreams of our child, and some parents go through a period of mourning where that life of seeing their child do extraordinary things, all that is essentially altered and changed. So one of my guests explained that we as parents need to go through a period of mourning to accept that, and that was one of those powerful things one of my guests just have shared, because I don't, you don't hear that from much of anybody or read about in books, and it is such a important thing to go through, because then once you accept that your child is different, you can move forward and push forward.
One of the things that I am curious to hear from you is what a really good conversation around autism looks like, if we think about colleagues at work and so on.
Absolutely. First, it starts off with having empathy and understanding of a person with autism or ADHD, because a lot of times when we see someone who's different, it just causes a natural negative reaction to people. So the very first thing is understanding that when a person has those conditions, it means that a person like me is different, not that we're broken. Once we get over that one hard, difficult wall/hill, then the conversations do become easier. And that's my advice at the high level. Just have a lot of empathy and understanding, and to understand that when a person does something strange or seems different, don't take it the wrong way. Just show a bit of empathy, compassion, and friendliness.
Yeah, well, for sure. And how does someone, so if you've got a colleague, for example, who you maybe know something about autism or ADHD, what might be a good way to start a conversation with someone, to just even ask them? Because they may or may not be diagnosed, they may be at different stages of sort of understanding for themselves. Do you have any sort of guidance on how someone might approach a colleague and start a conversation?
I would say at the high level, the basic, most simplest thing of all is just do it. Because I've been on both sides of the story, so to speak. So before I knew I had ADHD or autism, I too would treat other people differently. Now that I know that I have it, it has helped me. So my biggest advice is just do it. Just walk up to the person and introduce yourself. Just break the ice and try to make that connection. And you'd be surprised that even for people who are different, you'll probably have a lot in common with them, because we're all human beings and we all have differences at the end. And we just got to bridge that gap to understand our differences and find those similarities to connect. Or it could be something as simple as like us, between you and me, like we're both parents and we're both passionate about people. It could start with something simple as that. Just look for those similarities and build upon them, like building blocks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You can go very far.
Well, and that's it, isn't it? It's starting I like that. You just have to start the conversation and be willing to be, what's the word? Humble, really, I suppose, about, I'm interested. I've noticed, is that something that you could tell me a little bit more about, without even kind of saying it, because that's the other piece of it. And maybe being sensitive about the environment where you're asking that question. I guess might help. Do you think?
Yes, absolutely. Because to share, like, where I struggle with are in like crowded areas, which ironically people would enjoy, like bars or clubs are too noisy. Like those environments, I would just get overloaded with way too much stimulation, the lights and the loud noise. It is very, how you say, distracting, sometimes cause sensory overload and crashes. Sometimes I work best and converse best kind of like this in a quiet environment with a smaller number of people. So, and yep, you're correct. The environment does play a huge factor.
Right. Yeah. And is that also just about controlling the amount of data that that you're having to read, body language,
Yes.
or facial expressions or different points of view? Is that part of it?
Yes, absolutely. And another factor is sometimes just getting good night's sleep, because conditions such as, like, for example, ADHD, it is worse when we don't get a good night's sleep.
Right.
It's like being a zombie in the morning without coffee.
Not a grizzly bear, but more zombie-like.
Yes.
I'm a grizzly mama bear. Oh, my lack of sleep. But yeah, no, it's fascinating, isn't it? Because it is just learning to understand that certain environments are really conducive, and I can have a wonderful conversation with you like this because the environment I can control. And I know with one of your guests on your podcast, you talked about even interviews, how a sort of a panel of interviewers can be quite overwhelming for someone who's autistic, and creates a lot of undue stress that really kind of doesn't need to be there. And certainly I've learned to appreciate that, and I'd like your sort of perspective on this, is if you feel, if someone without autism is feeling under pressure or stressed, do you think that's amplified for someone who is autistic, that there's an intensity about it that maybe people can't understand?
Oh, yes, absolutely. You can think of it as, for people like me who have autism and ADHD, it's like not knowing the social norms rulebook. It's because no one they provided to us. So you are correct. So like if a person, like say, if you were having a bad day, this conversation would be much harder for me.
Right. And I think there's a piece in that, isn't there, about not taking offense if the reaction just seems maybe to us over the top, and forgive my language here, but I'm trying to put myself in the position of someone who doesn't know and doesn't understand. But where a colleague may feel like that colleague is overreacting for something that really doesn't warrant it. But then just appreciate and knowing something about that person, and therefore not taking it personally, because it's not the seeming overreaction isn't towards you as a personal affront. It's an experience we're having within ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the best way I could explain that is both sides need to find a middle ground, so to speak. Because before, when I was on the other side of the fence, so to speak, I would get offended because I didn't know at the time that you could say, like, I myself had to learn empathy. And I think I've only learned that in the past few years. I think quite slow sometimes.
Well, I think that's a challenge for a lot of people, but yeah, there is that piece of it. And the other thing that I am becoming more aware of is the need to apply logic to certain situations, when actually most of us make decisions or behave or react from an emotional state. But to someone maybe who is autistic, it just doesn't, it doesn't add up that someone's response is a certain way because logic says X. But I was having a discussion with my daughter last night, very much in this space of, people come from a react or respond from a position of either gets personal gain or emotion. Is that a fair thing to say? That is a challenge for people who are autistic?
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's on both sides, actually. One show I watched, which really opened a door to help me understand more, is watching Gilmore Girls on Netflix. Because I read this article like how this one person who's autistic, she noted how watching that one show helped her to empathize more. Because when we talk to people, we only see what's in front of us. We don't know the backstory or what's going on, like say at home or at work, or the history which is causing a person to do things that they do. And when you watch a show like Gilmore Girls, or in fact many of these other shows on the streaming shows now, once you understand the backstory and all the stuff that person has going on behind the scenes, it does help to build a lot of empathy instead of seeing that wall and being turned away by it.
Right. Wow. Very intrigued there. I'm just going to bring everyone back here because I'm just to kind of get an initial response. And it was a longer interview, so I was cutting it into the highlights. You will be able to listen to the full interview on the replay for the podcast. But yeah, just initial thoughts on what Nathan was saying there.
I
Hasbee,
think everybody's on mute. So shall I go in? Yeah, it was a great interview, and it's really nice to some really nice, helpful insights actually from Nathan, and well teased out as well, Sehaam. So I think there's lots to take away. I think a couple of thoughts which I had were there's a lot of people being diagnosed with ADHD, autism quite late in life, and I think that his story being 5 years ago is quite similar to mine, being 4 and a bit years ago, and yeah, I don't think it's just purely down to we are talking about it and we have better awareness, and I think that's definitely part of it. But there's something in our environment, something in the way that we are working. It's something to do with just this. There's things which we can't see, and maybe there's just a lot of stress, a lot of intensity, a lot of uncertainty as well, with just where we are. And I think that altogether, it's causing people to reach breaking point.
Well, and that's something that Nathan will come to in the second part of the interview, Ben. Absolutely. There's a and he works in in cybersecurity, so a very high pressured reactive environment already, and I won't say any more, but that's something that he actually points to. It's really interesting. Hasbee, did you have anything any other thoughts as well?
I do. I mean, I can relate personally to everything you talked about with Nathan, because I was diagnosed as autistic when I was 6 or 7. So I was lucky regarding that, because I was supported by psychologists and psychiatrists, so I knew I had this condition since the very beginning. But I think the important part to me is, in general, to not try too much to fit in a mold, or to try to fit in, and really listen to ourselves, and be more, to have more self-affirmation, because no matter what neurodiversity you have, it's really important to know how you behave, to see what your limits are, to know how you think, to really just get to know yourself better. And I think that's a key part in knowing about autism. At least that's what happened for to a lot of friends of mine who found out that they were autistic because they were not trying to fit in and they were just trying to live the way their brain functions. So I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, again, a topic, something that Nathan touches on. Sorry, Glenn, you were going to say something.
Oh, no. I was just really interested just in terms of how companies think about kind of the end-to-end recruitment process for neurodiverse individuals, applicants, and just touching upon that point around a kind of panel-based interview, which is sometimes a pretty standard kind of part of an interview process, and how, you know, intimidating that can be, regardless of, you know, your kind of where you're coming from. And I think for companies, the real, I mean, it's not even a challenge now. It's something they need to 100% consider, implement, and be part of their overall process, which is how are they going to, you know, engage with neurodiverse applicants and individuals. I mean, it's that pathway needs to be there right from the offset, right from the point of kind of applying all the way through. And I think that the momentum behind that and the need and requirement for that is only going to grow. So if companies are just kind of maybe touching on that now, I think that they're going to go on a steep learning curve.
Yeah. And so, well, look, there's more that he has to say on that, and certainly about, you know, just even being in meetings and how certain adjustments can make a difference. So I'm going to go to part 2 and get him.
So, quick background: the Ally of the Year Awards was created by Carmen Marsh in 2020. 2020 was the first event. She created this event to recognize and celebrate people and organizations that champion gender diversity. I won in a male ally category because of my global advocacy for women in tech and cybersecurity. I was shocked and honored to win the event, and I praise Carmen Marsh for her allyship, because recognizing allies, it is so important today, because we live in a world, especially in tech and cyber, we live in a world where I hear a lot of stories where for a lot of women, they are often the only women on their teams or organizations. So it is a struggle for many of them. And to your other questions of why I would advocate, I have worked in IT and cybersecurity for more than 20 years. And in that time, I've met and heard stories from many women who struggle to get a job, build a career, and to thrive in their jobs. Also, I've heard and read arguments from both sides, from people and organizations who are for and against gender diversity. I support and advocate for women because women represent our wives, mothers, daughters, sisters, cousins, nieces, and friends. And sometimes we all just need a little help from time to time.
Well, I think it's wonderful, and you're modeling a way of being that I think is going to become really, really important, and certainly something I see among younger generations, where there is that greater empathy and wanting to be more inclusive. And so yeah, absolutely. I showing how to do that is really important. So how do you do it? How, in a meeting, for example, how do you show your support for a woman?
Sure. At the high level, if you see an issue like a female colleague being mistreated, you got to call it out. I think a huge issue, which I've seen over and over, is gender stereotypes. Because all too often women are discouraged from the tech and cyber fields because, quite simply, their family or even their parents. All too often, traditional families want their daughters to do the traditional role, like just become a mother and have kids, which I think it's wrong. The door needs to be open so that a woman can have the choice to have both. Become a mother with children, or to have a career. The door should be open, and women should have access to both choices.
I wholeheartedly agree with you, Nathan. I think it's I think there is recognizing that and just being a support. And I think I would imagine for your female colleagues, just knowing that you're someone that they could maybe reach out to, have a conversation with, and just be a listening ear, right? As well as perhaps provide some counsel. What a great relief that must be.
Yep, absolutely. Because sometimes we all just need a little help, and even just showing empathy, just listening to a person. And over the past 20 years, I've heard many stories of so many women who struggle in their careers, and it really is a sad story.
Well, there's a lot that's that's not experienced by men, certainly, and that goes for many groups of people, right? We there's a lot that's taken for granted, and it's layered, it's complex and layered for sure. Yeah. So the podcast you started, NeuroSec, what drove that? What was behind that for you?
Sure. I started the NeuroSec Podcast last year to flip the script on the negative perceptions of neurodiversity in society today. The podcast helps to elevate the voices of people who might not have shared their stories before. Last month, the podcast hit more than 1,000 downloads globally, which is shocking to me because it's just me doing it. And hearing stories from people from all over the world taught me that everyone has their own unique story to tell that is special and amazing. Many of the people shared how they struggled and triumphed with ADHD and autism. Those stories have inspired and given hope to many people all around the world, and I feel proud to have uplifted their voices.
The stories are inspiring, are nurturing, really. Yeah.
Absolutely.
What did you learn? What did you learn about, what was the sort of key sort of thing that you weren't expecting maybe through your podcast?
I think at the high level, it taught me how important it is to become uncomfortable. Like, for example, when guests shared with me how, like, sometimes, like, when she is in a crowded room, she does lose control and needs to exit the room because of the sensory overload, which I experienced myself. Or another guest talked about how she was bullied in school, which is very common, and I've experienced it myself. It's those kind of deep, really intense conversations, which many people experience, but hearing it on a podcast, I think it does resonate with a lot of people and makes them comfortable to know that they are not alone in experiencing these things. That it's like a security blanket to know that you're not alone. Other people experience the same as you, and people are willing to accept you for who you are. And I think that's a very powerful message for many people.
Did you find that? Is that a shift that happened for you? Just, you talked about mourning, as a parent for a child, but what were the, I don't know if you can name them, the phases of sort of understanding about yourself?
It really did help understand myself, because with COVID in the past year or so, we can't go out and talk to people or converse normally. So the podcast has essentially become kind of like my window to the world, so to speak. And ironically, I actually have deeper conversation, like even this way, just one-on-one versus in a group. And you brought up a very interesting point, because many throughout history, there's been many famous people who've had similar conditions. Like even someone lately, what's her name? Greta Thunberg. She's said to be to have some of those conditions. In Sir Richard Branson, he's said to have it. And throughout history, even people like Mozart or even Steve Jobs, many people who have shaped the world and have changed the world have had or suspected to have such conditions. And at the end of the day, it comes down to, like, do we want to be normal, or since we're different, why not just be who we are and be extraordinary? And that level of acceptance and having those historical figures, I think that sends a powerful message to a lot of people that yes, we're different, but we can be very extraordinary. and make a lot of changes throughout the world.
Oh, for sure.
So cool.
I'm just gonna unmute.
Really super interesting.
There's so much to that, and in the interest of time, I'm going to direct people to the replay. I will finish playing that interview at the end of the live, so if people want to stay on and watch that. But yeah, really interesting, definitely.
Yeah, superb. And I think you captured phrase of the week from Nathan as well, did you not, Sehaam?
I certainly did. Shall we jump straight into that one?
Yeah, let's see that. That's cool.
It's short and sweet. So let me get my ducks in a row.
Everyone, my phrase of the week is having autism means being different and not broken. I am proudly actually autistic.
Right, indeed.
Well,
yeah. As we're almost nearing the end of our first live, I think it's only right for us to kind of let folks know where they can see us each week, and how they might kind of look to tune in. So I think certainly, well, there we go. Join us every Tuesday, as if by magic, on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube, or BetterConversations.LIVE. And certainly you can follow and link in with all of us on our LinkedIn pages, and follow Better Conversations on LinkedIn as well. What else am I missing, Sehaam? I'm sure there's one more thing.
Well, so the thing that I wanted to jump in on and share is the masterclass that I'm running on Thursday. So if folks haven't signed up for that, let me just share that information with you right now. So the masterclass is called Becoming Influential, and it's basically I'm going to be looking at what are you doing that's actually derailing yourself, what are some of the strategies that you can adopt, and I'm certainly going to be sharing, there we go, I'm going to be sharing how to, using the sort of techniques and skills of leaders who coach, how can you adopt that? So the idea is that anyone who attends is going to walk away with at least 12, if not more, skills and so on that they could use for becoming more influential. So yeah, join that. That's Thursday, 22nd of April at 2 p.m. UK time. And you can sign up at betterconversations.co/becoming-influential.
Perfect. A super free masterclass. Who would not want to sign up for that, right?
Absolutely.
Winner. But back to BC Live, guests. We would like guests. So if individuals that are watching, or that we know within our network, want to be a guest like Nathan, we're more than happy to have a conversation about you potentially coming on the show. They can connect with any one of us directly. Sehaam, is there any particular way that if they landed on the kind of BC Live LinkedIn page, or direct to you, might be easier?
If you go to BetterConversations.LIVE, you'll find all our profiles, so you can link with any one of us either on LinkedIn or Twitter and send a direct message to us there. And follow us on Twitter as well. Better Convos. I shall pop that up in a minute.
Like that.
So there you go. Better Convos, if you want to follow us there. We'll be posting about lots of things. Definitely really interested in people with a point of view about what a particular aspect where you think we're not having very good conversations and you would like to see an improvement. Come on, give us the words, give us the confidence to be able to start and continue a conversation and know how to navigate around that. Wondered, I've got a couple of thank yous that we cannot end without mentioning. So I want to mention two people with whom we wouldn't be pulling all of this together. Our first one is Bogdan Bratis, who does podcast editing. Yeah, and you interviewed Glenn recently.
He is very cool guy.
There's a lot to this guy. He is a fantastic technician, musician in his own right, So yeah, sorry, Hasbee, I'm covering you there. That's not intentional, obviously something we've got to fix. So yeah, you can
Note to
reach,
self.
yes, you can reach Bogdan there, sawandsign.co.uk. And the second person is Heidi. Yeah, Heidi does basically everything behind the scenes, organizing us, and you can connect with her on LinkedIn. So yeah, welcome back, Hasbee. So yeah, I think that kind of wraps it up. Did we mention the podcast or mention it again? So the replays will be on the podcast on all your favorite channels there. So yeah, let us know what you think of this our first event. Did we mess it up entirely, or was it? Hopefully, it was interesting. Any close?
I think. Yeah, I was going to say I thought Nathan was awesome. I'm looking forward to these guys as well, and Mag kind of hosting their first guest. That's going to be wicked. Really, really, really cool.
Yeah. Definitely. Next week, my guest is Bettina Palazzo. So we're going to be talking about ethics, which will be really interesting. Some of you know Bettina already. So yeah, really looking forward to that. That will be live. Yeah, so I'm going to continue the play of the interview with Nathan. But lovely. If you've joined us, fantastic. If you're watching the replay, tell us what you think. I'm all really interested. So yeah, we could leave it there, guys. I know, Glenn, you've got an interview to jump to, a client session.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
I'm gonna let you go with that. Cool. All right, folks. Thank you very much. We're gonna play out with Nathan.
Awesome.
Take care.
Cheers.
Sure. Just embracing yourself.
Hi everyone, my phrase of the week.
Giving yourself permission to be fully, step fully into who you are, rather than kind of, I don't know, this maybe trying to suppress something to fit in and conform and be accepted, but actually, just to embrace the fullness of who you are and grow into that more, because who knows, that could take you somewhere amazing. Yeah.
Yep, you are absolutely correct. And you brought up a really good point, because there is also a societal and cultural effect as well. Because in a lot of countries, it is really telling. Like, for example, like in some Asian countries, there is such pressure to fit in and align with, how you say, the cultural norm, so to speak, and to be like everyone else, that some people who have such conditions have been driven to suicide because of that pressure. And it's far worse, especially in Asian countries in particular, which it also reflects those countries' lack of awareness around neurodiverse conditions such as autism, ADHD. Because in those countries, it's more like the older traditional thing, like if you don't fit in, you're nothing. And that really has to change. It really has to change.
Yeah, I can see that culturally, that's definitely an issue. Do you think it's also there are gender differences as well when it comes to conditions?
Absolutely. That many of my podcast guests, they are women, and they follow a pattern of many women throughout our society where they don't even find out about they don't get diagnosed, and they don't realize that they even have these conditions until later in life. Who were like similar in my journey, they just struggle, and they only get the diagnosis in their 40s or 50s. But still, it's very important to emphasize that it is important to get the diagnosis and to understand and to get help.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think that's it's great that even, people in their 40s and 50s feel like it's okay to do that. Like, I can get this diagnosis, and yeah, absolutely.
Yep. And also you pile on the race aspect. So when a woman when a female has conditions like autism or ADHD, they often go undiagnosed because there's this expectation in our society that it is a white male illness slash condition, which is not true. Women are affected as well. So as a result of that perception, women go undiagnosed. Now, if you add on to that race, like a woman, like say of color or Latina or even Asian, they would also not go diagnosed because that same condition, which is ironic because in cyber we always say all the time that it's white male dominant. So you could think of ADHD and autism as being similar. Is white male dominant. That's a perception.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I what I've learned is that women societally are expected to behave in a certain way. So girls tend to mask it, maybe more than boys. And so, yeah, it does go undiagnosed for a lot of women. Can you recall a tough conversation that you had and how maybe that played out? Talk us through that. What was that like?
Sure. I think the hardest conversations I've had was where I'm surprised because people like me who have ADHD and autism, we like being comfortable. We don't like surprises. So if I'm surprised, if someone say asks me a question about something which I have absolutely no idea about, then that causes a lot of anxiety in me. That's when it comes really hard. I've learned to do through a lot of training is when that happens, be able to say, I don't have the answer right now. I'll get back to you. Something as simple as that. I had to learn the hard way.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Buying yourself a bit of time, right? No one can know everything, right? No one can have all the answers to stuff. So I think that is a very good sort of self-care approach to feeling under pressure, right? Feeling that you have to have an answer. But yeah, absolutely. Totally reasonable to say, I don't know. Leave it with me. I'll come back to you. I don't have an answer right now, or I wasn't expecting that to come up.
Yep. Right. And the most important thing is getting a good night's sleep, because working in cybersecurity, it is very stressful and it does involve a lot of long hours depending on the role. For example, for a SOC analyst responding alerts or investigating an incident or the latest breach, sometimes those men and women work very long hours, so they don't get enough sleep, and burnout does happen quite frequently in cybersecurity.
Right. Because it's a very reactive space, because you're, like you said, you're responding to incidents.
Yep, absolutely. So combine that with the fact that many people with autism and ADHD are really good at the skills needed to become cybersecurity experts, then you start to see, you put the two together. It's right. It's not always a pretty picture.
Well, it's two sides of the same coin, right? It's there's an advantage and a capability there, but also it does mean that you are in probably the most, what would be pressured anyway, right?
Yes.
Reactive spaces that are full of surprises and full of, well, this is going to take longer than we thought it was going to take to fix, or right? And then you've got to make those very quick, flexible adjustments, which, right,
best thing
creates more pressure.
And you can think of it similar to parenting. It's like, if you don't prepare for your child's day, it becomes a chaotic mess, and it's like you're struggling going from event 1, event 2, running around, having to balance that and running errands. But if you have it all planned out and scheduled, and you know what you're gonna do, you take that chaos and bring order to it, then it becomes a lot less stressful. Yep, absolutely. One of my podcast guests shared, like at her employer, they don't turn on the captions or do transcripts for just the people who have disability. They turn it on for everybody, so everyone have access to those tools. It's like a company standard now, so to speak. I think that is the kind of shift that all organizations need to go to make it more comfortable for everybody, so everyone benefits.
Right.
So I just started a new job at Microsoft in the past few months. I was really happy and surprised. Like even the things we just talked about, which many people take for granted, even like caption transcripts, within the software I use for work, I can just turn it on and it's there. It just blows my mind that something that we all take for granted for in our everyday lives, it's there and it's already built into the software. I really praise Microsoft because they made me feel very comfortable, and I don't have to ask for these things. It's all there. I just got to turn it on.
Any sort of final thoughts, Nathan, about what you hope for the future? Where would you like maybe the next sort of significant shift? Not even sort of 5 years, but just in the next 6 months. What would be a great place to reach?
I really hope I'm fighting for a world where everyone's differences are respected, because we're all different in some way or one way or another. I just really dream and fight for a world where those differences are respected and appreciated instead of the negative stigma we have today. And I think we'll get there.